Welcome to Whispers in the Dark, where every shadow hides a secret, and every tale leaves a scar. Here, we unravel the forgotten, the cursed, and the damned. Dim the lights, lock the doors, and whatever you do, don't listen too closely, because some stories don't like being told.
We were no strangers to the paranormal. Ghosts, cold spots, disembodied whispers, even full-blown EVP recordings. We'd seen it all, cataloged it, and usually we'd debunked it. Rachel, our resident skeptic and tech wizard, always had a logical explanation. Kyle, the meticulous researcher, could trace every legend back to its mundane roots. Marcus, the quiet one, felt things others didn't, a sort of human divining rod for residual energy. And me, the one who always pushed for just one more hour. We thought we knew the full spectrum of the supernatural, or so we foolishly believed. When the rumors of Ivy Manor farmhouse reached us, it sounded like another overhyped urban legend, perfect for a quick weekend investigation and an easy tick on our debunked list. Abandoned for decades, choked by a relentless tangle of ivy, whispered to be cursed. People go in and they just don't come out, the internet forum shrieked. It felt more like internet horror fiction than anything substantial, the kind of sensationalism we usually scoffed at. We took it as a challenge, a final frontier for our jaded senses. Another old house, another creaky floorboard, Rachel had scoffed, adjusting her glasses as she scrolled through the online chatter. Probably just some squatters or local kids trying to scare tourists. Or a clever real estate agent trying to boost property values, Kyle had chimed in, already pulling up geological surveys of the area, searching for underground springs or magnetic anomalies. Marcus, however, was quiet. Too quiet. He just stared at the grainy photos of the decaying farmhouse on my laptop screen, a faint shiver tracing its way down his spine that none of us noticed at the time. "Ivy Manor it is, then," I declared, a thrill of anticipation, not fear, buzzing through me. "Let's go cross another one off the list." But the moment our beat-up SUV turned onto the long, forgotten gravel road leading to the farmhouse, something felt off. The air grew heavy. The usual chatter in the car died, replaced by an unsettling quiet. The house stood at the edge of a field swallowed by untamed wilderness, its decaying structure not just tangled but strangled by ivy, as if nature itself was trying to consume and hide the monstrosity. As we approached, the sky, which had been a clear, late-afternoon blue, darkened unnaturally, almost actively. The sun, a defiant orange ball just moments before, struggled to shine through clouds that hadn't been there, a thick, bruised purple bruising the horizon. "Did anyone check the weather report?" Rachel asked, her voice a little too tight. "Cloudless, 25 degrees Celsius, Kyle muttered, checking his phone, which now showed no signal. He frowned. "Huh, that's new." The front door, a heavy oak slab, was slightly ajar, creaking in the rising wind, a sound like a tortured whisper. It was almost inviting, a gaping maw daring us to enter. We laughed off our unease, forcing the sound to be louder than it felt. We were seasoned. We weren't afraid. Not yet. "Well, it's not exactly putting out the welcome mat, but it's not locked either," I said, trying to sound jovial, though a knot was tightening in my stomach. "Ladies first?" I gestured towards the dark opening. Inside, the air was wrong. Not just cold, but thick, cloying, like it actively resisted our presence, pushed against our lungs with every breath. Dust coated everything in a grotesque velvet shroud, Yet there were no cobwebs, no scurrying insects, no signs of rodents or birds. It was too still, too sterile in its decay. The silence pressed in, amplifying the frantic beat of our own hearts. "Okay, this is something," Rachel admitted, her voice lower than usual. She pulled out her EMF detector, the device remaining eerily silent. Nothing. No fluctuations. It's dead. "Too dead, maybe," Marcus murmured, his eyes sweeping the cavernous, shadowed entrance hall. He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter.
We tried to joke, to cling to our usual routine. We took out our gear, the thermal cameras, the audio recorders, the spirit box. We began our methodical sweep, flashlight beams cutting through the gloom like hesitant swords. That's when the whispers started. Soft at first, so faint they could have been the wind sighing through broken panes, or the rustle of our own clothes. Too soft to record, the ambient noise of the old house drowning them out. Too soft to be sure we even heard them. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, above us on the second floor, below us in what we assumed was the basement, and, chillingly, in the walls themselves, as if something vast and unseen was moving within the very fabric of the house. Shadows, deeper than any natural light could cast, flickered at the edge of our flashlights, only to vanish when we snapped our beams towards them. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible in the oppressive stillness. "Hear what?" Rachel asked, her face illuminated by the green glow of her thermal camera, which showed nothing but cold, empty air. "Footsteps," Marcus breathed, his eyes wide, darting from one unseen corner to another, everywhere. Still, we pressed on, confident, logical, dismissive. We had an explanation for everything, or we would find one. This was just an old, settling house, playing tricks on our overactive imaginations. But then we found the basement door. It wasn't just closed, it was nailed shut from the outside, with thick, rusted iron bolts that looked ancient, their heads almost completely corroded. And scratched deep into the dark, rotting wood were a series of symbols. Not common sigils or pentagrams, but crude, jagged lines, spirals that seemed to twist inward, and shapes that resembled distorted, screaming faces. Symbols none of us recognized, not even Kyle, who prided himself on his knowledge of esoteric lore. "Well, this is dramatic," Rachel said, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. It sounded brittle, forced. Kyle, who had been trying to decipher the symbols, suddenly took a step back, his face paling. No, we should leave. This isn't a haunting. This is something else." His usual analytical demeanor had crumbled, replaced by raw fear. Marcus didn't speak at all. He just stared at the door, transfixed by the dark carvings, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. His hands were clenched into fists, trembling. I made the call. Against every instinct that was now screaming at me to run, to listen to Kyle, I made the call. "We came all this way. We're opening it." The words felt like a challenge thrown into the teeth of an unseen storm. With a collective effort, we pried the nails free, the rusted metal groaning in protest, each sound echoing like a gunshot in the silence. The door, when it finally gave way, sagged inward with a long, drawn-out groan that sounded suspiciously like a sigh of warning. The basement air was an assault. Cold, yes, but also wet, thick with the stench of rotting earth, mildew, and something else, something metallic, something sickly sweet and cloying that clawed at the back of our throats. It was the smell of old blood, of decay, of something utterly unnatural. Our flashlights cut through the absolute blackness, revealing a space that seemed to yawn wider than the house above it. In the center of the earthen floor, directly beneath a single crumbling support beam, was a stone altar. It was cracked, ancient, and stained with something dark, something that shimmered wetly in our lights. It was an impossible, sickening color, like dried rust mixed with deepest indigo. Around it, scrawled on the damp earthen walls, were more of those alien symbols, alongside crude, disturbing drawings of stick figures being pulled apart, their limbs stretching impossibly. And then we saw the photographs. They lined the basement walls, tacked up with rusted nails, some barely clinging on, others already fallen to the damp floor. All of the same family, a man, a woman, 2 young children. Each portrait, each faded sepia tone was more disturbing than the last. In the earliest, their smiles were forced, brittle. In the next, their eyes seemed to recede into shadowed hollows. Then, their faces began to subtly distort, smiles turned to grimaces of agony. Eyes turned utterly, terrifyingly black, reflecting no light. In the final, most horrifying photograph, the faces weren't human anymore. They were elongated, stretched, mouths agape in silent, eternal screams, their skin mottled and peeling like old parchment. They were no longer the family from the first portrait. They were something else. Marcus choked back a gasp, stumbling backward, his face ashen. Rachel stared, her mouth agape, her scientific objectivity shattered. Kyle whimpered, a low, guttural sound, his eyes fixed on the final monstrous image. And then we heard the voice. Not a whisper this time, not a creak or a rustle. It spoke through us. It filled the air, resonated in our bones, vibrated in our very teeth. It was a chorus of voices, layered and distorted, yet utterly clear, speaking from everywhere and nowhere all at once. It was the sound of 1,000 agonized screams compressed into a single terrifying statement. You shouldn't have come here. The lights flickered violently. Our cameras, our EMF detectors, our spirit boxes, everything died, plunging the basement into an absolute suffocating darkness, broken only by the frantic, useless beams of our flashlights. And suddenly, the shadows weren't just flickering anymore. They were moving, not just at the edges of our vision, but coalescing, thickening, stretching, reaching. A guttural shriek tore through the air. Something grabbed Rachel. We couldn't see it, but her scream still haunts me, echoes in the deepest corners of my nightmares. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror, abruptly cut short. By the time our frantic flashlights found her, she was on the floor, unconscious, a dark, smoking handprint burned deep into the exposed skin of her arm, sizzling faintly. The smell of scorched flesh filled the air, mingling with the metallic stench.
"Run!" Kyle screamed, his voice raw, utterly broken. We ran, or we tried to. The farmhouse changed around us. Doors that had led to the kitchen now opened into black voids that seemed to swallow light. Hallways stretched into impossible lengths, twisting and turning, each familiar corner leading to a new, terrifying distortion. The very geometry of the house warped, shifting with malicious intent. We were trapped inside a place that didn't follow the rules of the world anymore, a nightmare given physical form. It wanted us to feel what they felt, the family from the photographs, the original victims, the sorrow, the crushing, suffocating sorrow, the burning, consuming rage, and the endless, gnawing hunger. We weren't investigating anymore. We were being hunted, played with, tortured. Marcus, pale and silent, became a shadow himself, flitting ahead, driven by an unseen force.
Kyle, muttering prayers under his breath, kept stumbling, his eyes wide with unspeakable horrors. I dragged Rachel, her limp body a dead weight, my own breath ragged, every muscle screaming in protest. It took us hours, or maybe days. Time doesn't move right in there. It stretches and snags, leaving you lost in a horrifying eternity. Every shadow held a lurking terror. Every whisper promised a fate worse than death. We saw things that clawed at the sanity we thought we possessed. Figures moving in the periphery, impossible sounds, the feeling of icy fingers brushing against our skin. Kyle swore he saw the attic door open and something with too many eyes watching him from the darkness within. He hasn't been the same since. But eventually, inexplicably, the front door opened for us, as if the house, satisfied with its torment, had decided to let us go. Or perhaps decided it had taken enough for now. Not all of us made it out whole. Rachel never woke up. She lies in a hospital bed, her eyes open but vacant, the burn on her arm a constant, sickening reminder. Marcus never spoke again. He just stares into nothing, his face a mask of permanent horror. And Kyle won't talk about what he saw in the attic. He just whispers, over and over, his voice thin and reedy. It's still watching. It's always watching. He sees it in the shadows, in the corner of his eye, in his reflection. We left Ivy Manor farmhouse broken, shattered, and afraid. Not just of the dark, but of what lies beneath it, what lurks in the spaces between realities. Now we know why no one ever comes back from that place. Because Ivy Manor doesn't just haunt you, it keeps a piece of you, and it's always hungry for more.
Thank you for listening to Whispering in the Dark. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to Haunted Mansion Stories for more chilling tales from the shadows. Every listen, comment, and follow helps us keep the darkness alive, one whisper at a time.